It is interesting how quiet may be the most resounding presence in a room since his departure from this planet. The boundaries of our residence resonate distinctively. His laughter no longer resonates in the hallways, and the warmth of his presence now resides just in my mind before fading further like to a video that prompts one to like and subscribe. Ash provides substantial support. Each night, I sit on the periphery of orbit, the sheet still retaining his form, and I feign that he is merely away for a time. However, I am acutely aware that grief is inescapable. It permeates one's very being until even one's heartbeat becomes burdensome. I did not anticipate experiencing any emotions anew, neither delight, nor enthusiasm, nor the gentle softness that causes one's breath to falter. Nevertheless, amid the tranquil moments, an alternative presence commenced to guide something within me. A familiar presence, recognized for years now, perceived differently. His eyes had transformed, or perhaps mine had. It began with fleeting glances, not the superficial greetings spoken casually, but something more subdued and profound. The sensation you perceive on your skin prior to visual confirmation. I had observed him observing me once. No, not merely watching, but perceiving as though he comprehended more than what was immediately visible. He had matured not merely in height or age, but into his true self, evolving into an individual who transcended the backdrop of my recollections and was now integrating into my current reality. One morning I entered the kitchen to find him already present preparing coffee, with sunlight cascading across his face, as if it were meant to be there. His hair was somewhat disheveled, and his shirt sleeves were haphazardly pulled up. When he smiled, there was an element in it that halted me in my tracks. Was that all? The delay was prolonged, the atmosphere appeared overly warm, yet no words were exchanged. None were necessary. He presented me with the mug. Our fingers barely grazed, yet my pulse momentarily quickened. In a heart that had been desensitized for months, that moment felt like a thunderclap. I averted my gaze, but I was certain that he had experienced it as well. The days elapsed with unarticulated moments accumulating like volumes. He would linger on a shelf and in doorways offering assistance with matters I did not require help with. He inquired about my day, and I discovered myself divulging more than he may expect. His speech conveyed friendliness, yet an underlying tremor suggested something else. It was not incorrect. It was not incorrect. It seemed akin to being positioned too near a flame, both comforting and perilous in plenty. One evening we sat outside on the porch. The gentle wind caressed the trees, conveying the fragrance of jasmine and an essence reminiscent of remembrance. We engaged in minimal conversation, merely sitting adjacent to one another. Nonetheless, his hand was positioned enough near that a slight movement on my part may result in contact, and I did indeed adjust slightly. Although our fingers did not make contact, the intervening space became electrified. I sensed its allure, the potentiality of what if. He turned to me slowly and cautiously, as if apprehensive that the moment may dissipate if he accelerated too rapidly. "You have been silent recently," he remarked, nodding. "It is merely that everything continues to feel dissimilar." He gazed at me for an extended period, conveying a different sentiment. "Doesn't always imply negativity," I wished to respond, although I was unable to articulate it. His stare locked into mine, revealing all the unspoken thoughts between us. His eyes remained unwavering, yet they possessed a certain tenderness, a form of unguarded compassion that Madame desired from Tolan, merely to ascertain the authenticity of the warmth. "I miss him," I said, my voice faltering. He leaned in, not excessively, just enough to convey that I was not isolated in that place. "I miss him as well, but I recognize you, and you need not bear the burden alone." A knot formed in my throat that I could not swallow. For a brief moment I desired to rest my head on his shoulder, although I refrained. Nevertheless, the thought persisted thereafter. Several weeks elapsed, like a gentle melody accompanying a tranquil existence. He began presenting me with small tokens, flowers from the garden, my preferred snacks from the store, and undertaking repairs around the house without solicitation. I began to observe my heart's response upon his entrance into a room. It was neither remorse nor shame. It was a milder emotion akin to hope enveloped in hesitancy. One day it poured heavily and rapidly. We were both trapped in the backyard, attempting to retrieve the laundry before it became drenched. We giggled as we struggled with arms full of wet garments, our hair adhering to our faces. Upon our arrival indoors, we were soaked and gasping for breath. I gazed at him, and he gazed back at me. An unspoken and potent connection transpired between us. My garments adhered to my skin, and his gaze stayed for a little longer than appropriate. However, it was not desire within them, it was yearning, the type that arises from restraint, diverting attention by feigning engagement with the washing. He approached, maintaining proximity without physical contact, so that I could sense his warmth behind me. I remained still. "You look beautiful," he remarked, his voice low and just heard over the rain. She froze. My pulse raced. I desired to inquire why he made that statement and to seek clarification on his meaning, yet it understood. I inherently understood the gradual transformation. His visage was serene, yet his eyes were tumultuous. I discerned the internal battle. The contention between righteousness and reality was palpable. "I apologize," he murmured. "I did not intend to." "Indeed you did. I previously stated that I could not restrain myself." He retreated, affording me room and time. "I want you to understand that you are not inconspicuous." That night, I was unable to sleep as his words reverberated in my mind. I was not invisible, not him, and in some way that signified more than I could acknowledge. The following day, I discovered him seated by the window drawing. I was unaware of his artistic abilities. I inquired if I may view his work, and he hesitated before presenting the book to me. It was I, not overtly. It was not a matter of resemblance, but rather the sensation of the contour of a shoulder, the manner in which the light illuminated the profile of a face he had sketched, evoked the emotions I experienced when I was cherished as though someone had committed my tenderness to memory and sought to preserve it. I refrained from speaking, unable to do so, yet I positioned myself next him, closer this time, proximate enough for our arms to make contact, and I refrained from withdrawing. Days merged into nights, each individual drawing us nearer to a threshold. Neither of us desired to proceed yet, neither could we disregard the situation. He became my solace, and perhaps I became his motivation to remain. One evening, I could no longer endure the burden of silence. "Do you believe it is erroneous?" I inquired, my voice almost above a whisper. He gazed upward, taken aback. "What this entity is that we are not articulating?" He exhaled deeply, resting his elbows on his knees. "It is not erroneous to care. It is not erroneous to experience emotions. However, I do not wish to give you pain or bewilderment. You have endured a significant loss, and my throat constricted. Yet I'm present, and I feel revitalized because of you." He gradually turned to face me. "Let us simply coexist at this moment, devoid of promises or expectations." At that instant, the universe regained its tranquility. However, this time, it was not in grief, but in tranquility. There was an element of sanctity in the manner. Days elapsed following that chat. He did not hasten any actions, nor did I. Nonetheless, everything appeared more deliberate. Each gaze, each word, and every shared quiet possessed significance. We did not label it as love yet, in all the subtle ways that were significant. It was burgeoning between us, akin to him ascending through the fissures of our hearts. On several occasions, we prepared meals collaboratively. He positioned himself beside me, extending assistance. He was aware that I did not require aid in retrieving spices that were readily accessible. He lingered at my shoulder longer than necessary, and I feigned ignorance of his presence. Although my heartbeat accelerated with each instant, the kitchen became into our retreat. Resounding with the clatter of kitchenware and the buzz of an unnamed entity, one evening when we were preparing dinner, I dropped a spoon and we both extended our hands to get it. Simultaneously, our hands met and we were motionless. His fingertips delicately caressed. Manesh grasped it, and for the first time, he did not withdraw. His touch remained gentle, akin to an unanswered inquiry. "I think about you," he declared abruptly, as though the words had been suppressed for an extended period. I gazed at him taken aback. Not in a manner that disrespects. He proceeded by acknowledging our losses, while yet honoring the potential for future discoveries. My breath was momentarily halted. There was nothing inappropriate in his tone, only sincerity and optimism. I averted my gaze, apprehensive about the encounter. His stare may cause my heart to forsake its steady rhythm. "I am uncertain about what this is," I murmured. He moved slightly closer. "It need not signify anything at this moment. I merely desire to be in your proximity. Even if it remains solely this, it is still sufficient." That evening I remained solitary in my chamber, gazing at the ceiling, as my thoughts revolved over his utterances. I had not anticipated his declaration, but once articulated it became inescapable. I could neither disregard my physiological response upon his entrance, nor the involuntary inclination of my spirit towards his presence. The seasons commenced their transition. Autumn adorned the woods with shades that reflected the gradual intensity I experienced internally. We had more moments together without requiring justifications. Evening strolls in the vicinity, exchanging literature while listening to vintage recordings. In the tranquility of the living room, the house that previously seemed excessively spacious for a solitary heart now felt whole once more. However, it represented a distinct form of completeness, gradual and gentle mending. One afternoon a neighbor visited unexpectedly. She observed us seated together, raising a quizzical eyebrow. Subsequently, she dispatched a message that was succinct, incisive, and imbued with subtle judgment. Her brevity sufficed. The inference was evident. I fixated on her words, my chest constricting. The world failed to comprehend, and perhaps it never would. Yet it did not imply that my feelings were erroneous. Doubt infiltrated like a cold gust through a fissured window. That night I became aloof. I evaded his stare and kept our chat succinct. He, of course, noticed my behavior. I saw that he discovered me in the garden the following morning, tugging at a tweed that required no adjustment. "Did I do something?" he said gently. I shook my head, doubting my ability to speak. He approached, asking, "Then why do you regard me as if I am someone you wish to forget?" She turned toward him, her heart burdened, wishing it were simpler. He remained silent for a minute, and when he finally spoke, his voice was unwavering. "I choose authenticity over simplicity." Consequently, the barriers I had begun to construct disintegrated once more. I approached him slightly, just within reach to sense the warmth between us. The sun was emerging through the trees, spreading golden patterns onto his skin. He gazed at me like one admires a masterpiece, one fears to touch, filled with reverence and caution. "I believe I am afraid," I mumbled. He nodded. "So am I. However, I would prefer to experience fear alongside you than to feel secure in your absence for the first time." Over the months, I permitted myself to be embraced, not by arms, but by presence, by the unwavering constancy of someone who sought nothing beyond this present. Later that evening, while seated on the porch, he leaned slightly towards him. My shoulder grazed his, and I did not withdraw. He did not either. The stillness extended gently and was recognizable. "Do you recall that night he trained?" Hesmalid inquired. I contemplated constantly. So do I. I acknowledged that it was the initial instance I experienced emotions once more. He turned to me, his eyes seeking mine. I glanced down and then back up at him, and now I felt everything. He remained silent. Instead, he gradually extended his hand delicately, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His finger scarcely brushed my skin, yet my entire body responded, as if he had contacted something more profound than mere flesh. The surrounding world appeared to diminish, with no history or future, only the present now. Ultimately, he rose and extended his hand towards me. "Accompany me." I pursued him through. The house's attic, accessed via the stairs, has undergone a transformation. Gentle illumination suspended from the rafters. A book is arranged neatly by a comfortable chair, accompanied by many cups of tea awaiting. "I have been engaged in a project," he stated as he picked up a notebook. He paused before offering it to me. "It pertains to you, to us, not a narrative, merely fragments of moments." I opened the book and read that his words, albeit unrefined, conveyed sincere and unfiltered feelings inscribed on the page on sadness, the discovery of beauty in unforeseen circumstances, and a woman who consciously revitalized someone unaware of his need for salvation. I closed the book, my heart trembling. "Why are you giving this to me?" he inquired. "Because I want you to understand that I recognize you not merely as someone who was once loved, but as an individual still deserving of affection." I gazed up at him, tears poised to spill, and before I could utter a word, he gently interjected, "There is no need for you to articulate anything. I merely wish to inform you." I paused momentarily, clutching the notebook to my chest. I unexpectedly walked towards him, encircling his waist with my arms. He initially tensed in surprise, but then relaxed into the embrace. We remained in that state, silent and still, with our hearts communicating where words were inadequate. That night I remained awake in bed, gazing at the ceiling once more. This time I was not tormented by silence. Rather, I was captivated by the notion of someone downstairs, someone who had transcended mere presence and friendship, having patiently awaited my heart's return to itself. Over the ensuing days, a transformation occurred. We no longer needed to conceal our connection, not from one another. At least the world would remain oblivious. However, within the confines of our home, we established an environment where healing manifested as laughter, once more allowing grief to reside silently in the corner, while life continued to progress around it. One morning when we sipped tea in the attic, he looked to me with a serene smile. "May I pose a question?" he responded. "Certainly. If circumstances had been altered, if life had presented us with an alternative trajectory, do you believe we would have still encountered one another?" I gazed at him, my heart brimming. "Consider certain linkages. Discover a solution." Regardless of the route, he nodded gently while extending his hand towards me. This time I did not hesitate. I let his fingers to intertwine with mine.